Welcome to Stewing the Pot. Today's story is called Vanished in Plain Sight, The Disappearance of Gretchen Fleming. In the quiet hours of December 3, 2022, Gretchen Fleming walked out of a West Virginia bar and into the night, never to be seen again. A gifted musician and fiercely independent spirit, Gretchen's sudden disappearance left behind a trail of unanswered questions, conflicting accounts, and a community desperate for truth. Vanished in Plain Sight dives deep into the mystery surrounding her final hours, the man she was last seen with, and the chilling silence that followed. Through immersive storytelling, psychological insight, and ethically grounded investigation, this podcast explores not just what happened, but why it still haunts those who knew her. With a $100,000 reward still on the table and no charges filed, the search for justice continues.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stewing the Pot. This is Greg Stewart, and today we're going to talk about a young girl by the name of Gretchen Fleming. And Gretchen was a girl from, and I like to say still is, a girl from the West Virginia area known as Parkersburg. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Parkersburg, but it is a small town, and I have a home about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from Parkersburg. I actually used to cut through there to go to the Mothman Museum just outside of Parkersburg. And all the little towns there are built very similar, as well as the area of my home out in Columbus. So I bring this because it's usually a tight-knit community, and you don't get many drifters coming through. So the person that we're talking about, Gretchen Fleming, was kidnapped, went to a local bar in the wee hours of night, which is usually when your locals are there, and she was never seen again. Her purse was left behind, all of her belongings, and there was a person of interest that she stepped out with, and that was the last they've seen of her. So we're going to elaborate more on that. But again, this is the story of Gretchen Fleming, and this is really dear to my heart because I've known people, I've worked in coaching with people that have had lost someone, disappeared, not to be seen again. And it's really heartbreaking. So every story is really very close to my heart, but this one definitely hits because there is also, in reference to my life, family that have gone through someone who was taken and not to be seen. So that might be for a different story on a different day. In the meantime, if you can, before we get into the story, can you please subscribe, like, and share? And it's really appreciative because we are growing and it's thanks to you. So once again, it does my heart well and the help for others to subscribe, like, and share. And again, you are the armchair life coach with me. So we're going to dissect, break down, and connect to this storyline. So let's begin our story.
It was a Saturday night, December 3, 2022. Gretchen was out at the My Way Lounge in Parkersburg, a small local bar. Familiar faces, nothing unusual. She'd been seen earlier that day, running errands, texting friends. There were no signs of distress. Surveillance footage shows her inside the bar, calm, conversational. She wasn't intoxicated. She wasn't causing a scene. She was just there, present, alive. But sometime after midnight, Gretchen left the bar, not alone. She was seen walking out with a man, older, well known in the area. A former employee of the city, someone with influence, someone with a reputation. That man was the last person to see Gretchen Fleming alive. Law enforcement searched his home, seized electronics, interviewed witnesses, but no charges were filed. No arrest, no body, no closure. And while the man remains unnamed publicly, locals know who he is. Rumors swirl, allegations surface. But without hard evidence, the case remains in limbo. For Gretchen's family, the silence is unbearable. For her friends, the questions are endless. And for the community, the fear is real.
Okay, so welcome back to Stewing the Pot. Gretchen Fleming. She's a wonderful girl from a small town, and she has big dreams. She was very much into her music. From my work as a life coach, we connect her just like all of us, but highly emotional. She lives through her music, emotion from hearing certain lyrics. It really connects to her, really connects in her feelings and how she basically speaks in her love language to people as well as her everyday language. She wrote it in her journals. People that knew her said, you have to hear her lyrics, you have to hear her music. So very connected to her spirit and soul, so much that she wanted to share it with the world. She wanted to leave small town Parkersburg and move to a big city. And that big city came into the form of Charlotte, North Carolina. And she ends up going there. She meets a guy and she's feeling like, I am on my purpose. I'm really connecting here. I'm really making a difference within myself. And then she has a setback. She has a breakup and she ends up coming home. And parts of her just feel like is missing. I've now lost my identity, and she's feeling the life of a behavior. So at this point, she's now adjusting. She's making herself comfortable. She has siblings because she has a stepmom and her father. Basically, they have children. So she's also a role model there, but she's moving on with her life, basically. So one night she decides to go out. She goes out to a local bar. The hours get going and it's getting into the wee hours. And she meets a gentleman who's sitting in there who's also a local. People know this person. His name is Preston Pierce. Now, Preston is an interesting character because he also has an alias name and he goes by Daryl Lott. Now, I don't know if he expressed that when he was speaking to her, but people know this, obviously. And so he gets to tell her a little bit about himself. And Preston used to be a police officer. He goes, I was in law enforcement. Now, if you heard someone, you're sitting there, and maybe you were apprehensive at first, but they said, a little bit about myself. I'm a former police officer. He's an older gentleman. So maybe reminds you of your dad. So you feel like you're developing rapport. You feel a feeling of, I'm safe. This is comfortable. And maybe whatever the subject are, maybe she's mentioning her music, whatever it is, it was enough for her to leave with Preston and head to his home. So much that she left her belongings, whether we said, oh, well, only going to be a minute. I live right down the road. I just want to show you these things. Maybe you want these vintage albums, because she was really into vintage things. She liked to go to thrift stores and things of that nature. So you could imagine that conversation and how it's evolving. So I have some things. Would you mind to have them? Yeah, no, leave your stuff. We'll be right back. She never comes back. She never comes back. And that's where the story is going to move forward now. Before we go there, here's your poll question in reference to this subject on going to this person's house, feeling that sense of comfort, and now all of a sudden she's missing. Here's your first question.
The man last seen with Gretchen Fleming on the night she vanished is known today as Preston Pierce, but that wasn't always his name. Before adopting the name Preston Pierce, he was Daryl Lott, a former police officer who served in multiple towns across West Virginia. His background in law enforcement adds a chilling layer of complexity to this case. Not only does it raise questions about access, power, and trust, it also fuels public suspicion. How does someone with that kind of training and authority become the last known contact in a missing persons case and still remain uncharged? Despite extensive searches, digital evidence collection, and mounting public pressure, Preston Pierce has not been arrested or formally accused. He remains a person of interest, a term that feels increasingly hollow as time passes. But the dual identity, Daryl Lott turned Preston Pierce, casts a long shadow. Was the name change a fresh start, or something more calculated? And how does his law enforcement past shape the way investigators approach him? Is there caution or quiet protection? In cases like this, perception becomes part of the puzzle. The public sees a man with insider knowledge, possibly skilled in evasion. Investigators see someone who knows the system, its loopholes, its language, its limits. And somewhere in the middle of all this ambiguity is Gretchen. Before he was the last person seen with Gretchen Fleming, before the FBI searched his home, Preston Pierce was just another face in Parkersburg. But those who knew him, or crossed paths with him, tell a different story. Back when he worked as a delivery driver, multiple women say he would call them after dropping off their orders. Not to confirm delivery, not to follow up, but to make sexually inappropriate comments, unsolicited, unsettling, and persistent. Some say they stopped ordering from certain places just to avoid him. Others say they warned their friends. And while these accounts were never formally investigated, they paint a disturbing picture, one that aligns with other allegations from his past. Pierce, formerly known as Daryl Lott, was reportedly fired from law enforcement roles for sexual harassment, a man with a badge and a reputation for crossing lines.
We have Preston Pierce, but we also now have the investigators who are gathering information. But we know, at least you will know shortly, that Detective J.M. Zimmerman, this individual has gathered information from that evening that Gretchen was in this person's car. Now, being a policeman from several police departments, you learn things. And it sounds like because he went from police station to police station, that he'll probably learned a lot and different methodologies, but also how West Virginia works. From department to department to department, you learn things. So if this person is the individual, now he is the person of interest, though he has not been charged, and he has been since this crime up until last year, has been looked at twice and is still an open investigation. And from the sound of things, he is their lead suspect. But again, he would know how to clean an area, where to point, where to put, and where to place someone. And also, if you're familiar again with this part of West Virginia, the Ohio River runs right along this area. So this person resides there, knows the area, and unfortunately, it's not looking good. But the case is open despite this amount of time. Hopefully that they can come up with something, but let's learn a little bit about Detective Zimmerman and what he has gathered in reference to this case. This person was in the car, but that doesn't mean anything. Despite the strong feeling that not only Detective Zimmerman has, but Police Chief Matthew Board, who has publicly stated that this case is not even close to cold, and emphasized the department's emotional investment in reference to this case. Now, anyone out there, I'm sure this has been stated many times, but anyone out there that does know anything in reference to Gretchen Fleming's disappearance, of course, they're going to come forward. But that's also why I'm glad we're doing this podcast, because it's been a while since this has been brought back up to the forefront in reference to investigating, seeing something. Maybe he's out one night, had a few drinks. If it is this person of interest, that he says something that says, hey, by the way, this once belonged to Gretchen, something that makes him slip up. But we're going to continue now the storyline on how this picks up, how it ends, and of course, where they're going with it today. So here's your next question.
In the case involving Preston Pierce, formerly known as Daryl Lott, the investigating officer is Detective J.M. Zimmerman of the Parkersburg Police Department. The department has been actively pursuing the case of Gretchen Fleming, who disappeared in December 2022 after leaving a bar with Pierce. Detective Zimmerman has remained deeply committed to the investigation, with the case still being his daily priority. Police Chief Matthew Board has publicly stated that the case is not even close to cold, and emphasized the department's emotional investment. There's not a day that goes by that she and her family are not on my mind and the minds of the men and women of the Parkersburg Police Department. As we close this chapter in our ongoing exploration of Gretchen Fleming's disappearance, we're reminded that justice isn't just a destination, it's a process shaped by persistence, empathy, and the quiet determination of those who refuse to let a name fade into silence. Detective Zimmerman and the Parkersburg Police Department continue to walk that line between public pressure and procedural integrity, between emotional investment and investigative restraint. And while Preston Pierce remains a person of interest, the absence of formal charges leaves a community suspended in uncertainty. But uncertainty doesn't mean inaction. It means asking better questions. It means listening harder. It means staying engaged. So we ask you, our listeners, what should justice look like moving forward? What role should law enforcement play in balancing transparency with truth? Head to our poll and let your voice be part of the conversation. Because in cases like these, silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the absence of answers. And together we're here to keep asking.
Okay, so welcome back to Stewing the Pot. This concludes this episode. And again, if there's any information out there that someone can bring to the police, that's wonderful to help this case, to bring closure. And I'd love to say she's alive. I'd like to believe that. So I'm going to go with that. And during my segments, I usually bring out something in reference to give you for life coaching, something that you can use. That's the whole big point of me putting something like this together. And one of the things I could say is in the beginning of this podcast, I had referenced that my case, and I'm not going to elaborate it now, that's for a future episode, but in reference to a missing person in my life, and that would be my son. And I bring that to your attention because that's as far as I can go. Just like this case, it's being investigated and moving forward in the system. So if I would to give you something to utilize as an armchair life coach outside of the questions that were brought to this podcast, one of the key factors is this. When someone is going through something like this, it's hard to put into words to help that person. But let them grieve, let them scream, let them yell, let them write things down, and just be the support system. And I utilize this in life coaching as well as in reference for myself. So that's the key factor here, is utilize that platform, because words really are difficult when someone is going through something like this when it comes to any kind of loss. So just being the support system, letting them grieve, yell and scream, because there is a process that a person has to go with grief, with loss, and they just have to go through it. So I hope this was helpful. And please, once again, let's continue this journey together. Please subscribe, like, and share, because it is going to a great cause for me to come up with things like this in reference to giving you tools for life coaching and for you to be my assistants in reference to my armchair life coach. So until next time, have a great evening or day wherever you may be. Bye now.